Today's presentation will explore the Sandy Plains multi-age teaching scenario. This scenario will illustrate the unique challenges faced in rural and remote locations and how these are addressed using a case study approach. Structural features, pedagogical features, and personal and professional attributes will be critically analysed in relation to a 5-week English unit and sample lesson plan. Structural features refer to physical, psychological, and social characteristics of a specific school context that can have positive or negative implications on student learning. Structural features of Sandy Plains include its multi-age structure, ICT access, internet reliability, access to support staff, the availability of resources, the location of the school, the community's economic and cultural context, and the demographics of the student population. The school possesses a wide range of ICT devices, including a small bank of computers and an interactive whiteboard in the Prep to 3 classroom, as well as a shared class set of iPads across the school. These ICT resources can be used to effectively engage and motivate students, provide differentiated and flexible learning options, and prepare students for the 21st century. However, Forlorn and Locke highlight that these ICT devices are often underutilized in rural and remote areas due to limited teacher competency, practice, and confidence using ICT. Furthermore, like many rural and remote schools, Sandy Plains experiences unreliable internet connection. Therefore, these complexities were considered so that the benefits of the ICT resources available could be fully realized in the classroom. For instance, the UDO task for the prep students utilized the iPad's voice-over function, which does not require internet, as a way to remove the barrier of limited writing capabilities. Valiant and Tarman 2011 support that this use of ICT differentiation promotes student independence within multi-age classrooms when demonstrating learning outcomes. Sandy Plains is part of a rural cluster of schools that shares a range of support staff, including regional project officers for curriculum, IT, and inclusive education, a guidance counsellor, and speech therapist and physiotherapist. However, face-to-face visits are limited due to the location of the school. Therefore, intra-school support staff, such as the full-time teacher aide and the Indigenous education worker, were utilised heavily within this unit and lesson plan. Recognition of the wealth of knowledge of the Indigenous education worker was drawn upon when selecting resources like picture books for the unit. This choice was informed by place-based pedagogy, which recognises that learning is most effective when connected with the community, life experiences, and the geographical location of the learner. Additionally, Fickle, Abyss, Brown and Astle 2018 emphasise that partnerships with community are essential to develop culturally responsive practices that engage learner identities and culture into the classroom. However, often attempts at forming these essential partnerships are negatively impacted by the socio-historical context. Therefore, the Indigenous education worker was drawn upon as a bridge with the community to assist in the formation of partnerships in the unit. For example, when organising local community members to visit the classroom and read local stories to students, the Indigenous education worker was involved. Another structural feature considered was the multi-age structure of the classroom. Challenges of multi-age structures include the risk of omission or repetition of curriculum content, as well as limited teacher knowledge of effective multi-age approaches. These challenges can often lead teachers to implement rigid teaching of each year level's curriculum separately. This approach does not take advantage of the unique affordances of multi-age classrooms, such as flexible cross-age grouping, peer and cooperative learning, and increased student confidence and sense of belonging in the classroom. To overcome these challenges and take advantage of these affordances, Smith, High-Ride, Byhammer, and Raggle 2015 recommend clustering related curriculum across year levels when planning. To do this, the backwards mapping approach was utilised. This involved identifying the concepts and skills students needed to learn from the achievement standards and the rubric, and then identifying conceptual threads across year levels. The Department of Education 2014 reinforces this approach for multi-age classrooms to ensure curriculum accountability. Pedagogical features of the unit and lesson plan were selected based on the school pedagogical frameworks, individual student learning needs, and the multi-age structural considerations. Holden and Zhang 2018 identify that remoteness continues to limit educational opportunities and result in lower engagement and achievement of students in these areas. In response to this, the school pedagogical framework of explicit instruction was implemented. For instance, the 14th element of explicit instruction, deliver the lesson at a brisk pace, was implemented by breaking instruction into short 10-minute chunks. This choice was also informed by the multi-age structure of the classroom, so that the teacher could rotate between the Year 2s group and the combined group of preps and Year 1s. Effective pacing was achieved by varying the activities and groupings whilst giving students adequate time to process learning without losing engagement. The lesson followed the gradual release of responsibility model of I do, we do, you do. To ensure students in each year level received targeted instruction aligned with their learning intentions, it was decided to deliver the focused instruction during the I do phase to the preps and Year 1s separately from the Year 2s. This meant that the Year 2s could not begin with focused instruction at the start of the lesson. The role of teacher aides was then considered when deciding what task to allocate to the Year 2s. As teacher aides are expected to supplement, not replace teacher instruction, a you do task was selected to consolidate prior learning while the I do was being delivered to the other students by the teacher. To cater for the individual student learning needs within the context, the Maker Model 1982 of differentiation was applied. Adjustments to the learning environment were made for the prep student with autism spectrum disorder, hereon referred to as ASD, and the 2 students with glasses. Visual reminders were placed on their desks. This choice was informed by the context, which highlighted that the student with ASD struggles socially. It was also informed by Barnett's 2018 evidence-based strategy of visual cues for ASD students. This strategy supports student participation in peer learning by making explicit the tacit understandings other students already possess about the social interaction expectations. An additional challenge within this context was the social dynamics of 2 Year 2 students. Therefore, grouping of Year 2 students needed to be attuned to not only the academic priorities, but also the behavioural and social needs of the students. These 2 students were separated into different groups during the initial You Do Together task to reduce social tension. Another way these difficult social dynamics were managed will now be explored. School-wide approaches to behaviour prevention are more effective than individual classroom behaviour approaches due to the consistency of expectations across classroom and non-classroom contexts. Therefore, strategies from the school-wide positive behaviour for learning framework were specified in the adjustments. These strategies will support these 2 students to display the expected behaviours towards each other and their peers. There were also 2 students in Year 1 who required extension. The Maker Model 1982 suggests that differentiation for gifted students falls into 4 possible subcategories: process, product, content, and learning environment. There were a number of possible evidence-based solutions within each of these subcategories that were considered. One option was to use ability groupings in the learning environment, as suggested by Rogers' 2007 Synthesis of Research into Gifted Learners. This option was not selected because the 2 students could not be grouped with similar ability Year 2s because the Year 2 learning intention was different. Another option was to modify the content by increasing the complexity of task demands. As gifted learners often lose interest during review and repetition, this option was selected during the You Do activity. To increase the complexity of the You Do task, the lesson takes advantage of the Fontes and Pinnell guided reading leveled text available in the school. Ongoing data collection throughout the unit from reading observations ensures that the allocations of these guided reading text is appropriately challenging for these 2 students. McLeod 2012 suggests that the process of learning can be modified for gifted students by asking them to share their proof of reasoning. The lesson achieved this through use of targeted questioning, where these 2 students were asked to explain why a personal experience is connected to an event in a story. The product was differentiated by asking students to include greater details on their T-chart with 2 sentences in each column instead of 1. The 2 Aboriginal students in Prep and Year 1 are EALD learners. Taplin 2017 identifies 2 successful strategies for enhancing EALD students' literacy learning and understanding of content. These are extended oral language opportunities and selection of texts with links to students' life experiences. Therefore, picture books were selected with appropriate links to students' lives, such as The Playground Day by Jennifer Mers, which links to students' experiences on the school playground. The Toast Tree by Karina Martin was selected because students are likely to have experiences in nature. Extended oral language opportunities were also chosen over writing activities. The State Government of Victoria recommends providing EALD learners with question prompts to help them compose their speech during oral language activities. Thus, questions were implemented in the lesson We Do, as shown on this slide. There were also 6 students in Prep and Year 1 on occupational therapy plans for fine motor skills. Manual dexterity, including pincer grip and other intricate and precise hand movements, are necessary for handwriting. The occupational therapy plan indicates that these students are experiencing difficulties in these areas. The plan identifies that pencil grips should be used by all students and finger warm-ups, such as a pencil walk, to improve pincer grip should be completed before writing. Thus, these adjustments were made to the lesson plan during the You Do writing task. Teachers require a number of personal and professional attributes to effectively teach in rural and remote contexts such as Sandy Plains. The personal attributes will now be explored. One challenge experienced in rural and remote areas is professional isolation, as some services do not exist or are in distant locations. Additionally, professional isolation occurs as teachers can't collaborate with other teachers of the same year level or gain expertise from specialist teachers due to the small school size. Initiative is a personal attribute that would support teachers to proactively reach out for help and take steps to contact appropriate support staff and services, either at the school or online. Additionally, initiative is needed to form relationships with local staff, such as the Indigenous education worker and school families. Lloyd 2002 identifies that multi-age classrooms are another challenge for teachers in rural and remote areas, due to the increased workload of planning and teaching more than one year level. A personal attribute necessary when faced with multi-age classrooms is organisation, so that teachers can effectively manage competing priorities and use time efficiently. Teacher well-being is another significant challenge, as rural teachers often experience loneliness due to separation from family and friends. They also experience high level of stress, and burnout often occurs. Resilience is an imperative personal attribute to ensure teacher well-being. It includes having coping skills, finding a work-life balance, and the ability to adapt and persist in a new environment despite initial challenges. The 8 Australian Professional Standards for Teachers outline what is expected of teachers by identifying 7 standards. These standards highlight professional attributes required for the rural context to ensure students receive quality teaching as identified by the Action Plan for Rural and Remote Education, Department of Education 2018. For instance, Standard 1 involves an understanding of students and how they learn. This standard encompasses professional attributes such as cultural awareness and teacher witness, which help teachers to understand the unique cultural practices and norms of a specific context. Furthermore, APST 1.3 recognizes that students in these areas often have diverse linguistic, cultural, and socio-economic backgrounds that can be used as a strength in the classroom. Without an understanding of students and their backgrounds, it is impossible to plan responsive instruction. The Queensland College of Teachers emphasises in the Code of Ethics the importance of respect and confidentiality. Similarly, Standard 7 emphasises professionalism. These are 3 professional attributes especially important in the rural context due to the small population size and the reduced anonymity.